The heart monitor screamed a single, unbroken tone. 25 military doctors stood motionless around the table, their gloved hands still slick with blood, their eyes fixed on the flat line cutting across the screen. The NATO commander's chest lay open, ribs spread wide, every major vessel clamped, every protocol followed to the letter. They'd done everything right, and he was dying anyway. Time of death. Stop! The voice came from the back corner, quiet, steady, almost bored. Every head in the room turned. A young woman in pale blue scrubs stood near the supply cart, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. She wasn't part of the surgical team. She wasn't even supposed to be in the room. "You're treating the wrong injury," she said. "Before we go any further, if you want to see how this story ends, stay with me all the way through. Drop a like, leave a comment with the city you're watching from, and let's see just how far this story can travel." The operating theater at Ironclad Field Hospital sat buried in the heart of Ravenna Base, a sprawling NATO military installation perched along the Adriatic coast of northern Italy. The facility was clean, efficient, and brutal in its precision. Every surface gleamed under halogen lights. Every instrument had its place. Every person knew their role. Except Claire Whitaker. She was 27, white, small-framed, with dark hair tied back in a bun that never quite stayed tight. Her scrubs were always a size too big. Her shoes squeaked on the tile. She moved through the halls like a shadow, restocking supply carts, prepping IV lines, handing scalpels to people who never looked her in the eye. The surgeons called her the quiet one. The orderlies called her the new girl, even though she'd been there 8 months. The charge nurse called her adequate. No one called her by name unless they needed something. Claire didn't mind. She preferred it that way. The less they noticed, the less they asked. And the less they asked, the safer she stayed. She'd learned that lesson a long time ago. It was a Tuesday morning when the first fracture appeared. Claire was restocking gauze in Trauma Bay 3 when Dr. Marcus Hale walked in, flanked by 2 residents. Hale was tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair and a voice that could fill an auditorium. He'd been chief of surgery for 6 years. He spoke at conferences. He wrote guidelines. He was, by every measurable standard, the best they had. He also hated being questioned. "Nurse," he said without looking at her, "I need a central line kit, and make it fast." Claire pulled one from the cabinet and handed it over. Hale ripped it open, gestured to the patient, a young corporal with a shrapnel wound to the abdomen, and began barking orders to the residents. "Subclavian approach. Standard insertion. Watch the angle." The first resident moved in, threading the catheter. The monitor beeped steadily. Everything looked fine. Then the beeping changed. It slowed, deepened. The oxygen saturation dropped. Hale frowned. "Check the line." The resident adjusted. The numbers dropped further. "Pull it back. You're too deep." The resident obeyed. The patient's breathing turned shallow. His lips started to pale. Claire stood near the foot of the bed, watching the monitor, watching the patient's chest, watching the way his neck veins bulged just slightly on the right side. She knew what was happening. She also knew better than to say it out loud. But the numbers kept falling. "Dr. Hale," she said quietly. He didn't respond. "Doctor, I think—" "Nurse, I didn't ask for your input." The resident was sweating now, hands trembling as he repositioned the catheter again. The monitor screamed a low, warbling alarm. Claire stepped forward. "You've punctured the pleura. He's got a tension pneumothorax." The room went silent. Hale turned slowly, his expression carved from stone. "Excuse me?" The catheter went through the lung, air's filling the chest cavity. That's why his pressure's dropping. One of the residents glanced at the monitor, then at Hale, then back at Claire. Hale's jaw tightened. "I've done this procedure 1,000 times. I don't need a floor nurse telling me how to do my job." "Then check the chest x-ray," Claire said evenly. "You'll see it." For a long, brittle moment, no one moved. Then Hale snapped his fingers at the radiology tech. "Fine, humor her." The image came up on the screen 30 seconds later. Collapsed lung, right side. Exactly where Claire said it would be. Hale stared at it. His face didn't change, but something in his posture did. He turned to the resident. "Chest tube. Now." The resident scrambled. They decompressed the lung. The patient stabilized. Claire stepped back, hands folded, expression blank. Hale left the room without a word. The residents didn't look at her. No one said thank you. But from that moment on, the dynamic shifted. Not in her favor. In the opposite direction entirely. By the end of the week, Claire's schedule had been quietly rearranged. She was moved from trauma rotations to the supply wing. Her shifts were changed to overnights. Her access to certain rooms was restricted without explanation. The message was clear: stay in your lane. She did, for a while. Then came the explosion. It happened on a Friday, just after 1900 hours. A training exercise gone wrong at the northern perimeter. 5 casualties. 2 critical. The base went into lockdown, and every available surgeon was called to the OR. Claire was in the supply room when the first stretcher rolled past. She heard the shouting, the rapid footsteps, the controlled chaos that only a mass casualty event could produce. She stayed where she was, counting bandages, labeling bins, doing exactly what she was told. Then someone shouted her name. "Whitaker, we need hands in OR2, now!" She dropped the box and ran. The operating room was a war zone. Blood streaked the floor. Monitors beeped in discordant rhythms. Surgeons moved between tables, calling for instruments, calling for blood, calling for time they didn't have. At the center of it all was a man in his 50s, unconscious, his uniform torn open to reveal a chest wound that looked like something out of a nightmare. His name tape read Morrison. His rank insignia marked him as a brigadier general, and standing over him, hands deep in his chest cavity, was Dr. Hale. "I need more suction," Hale snapped. "And get me another unit of O negative." Claire moved to the supply cart, pulling what he needed, handing it off without a word. The monitor started beeping faster. "He's tachycardic," one of the residents said. "I can see that," Hale shot back. "Clamp the aorta. We're losing him." They clamped. The bleeding slowed, but the heart rate didn't. Hale's hands moved faster, more aggressive, more desperate. Claire watched from the edge of the table. She watched the way the blood pooled, the way the tissue moved, the way the rhythm on the monitor didn't match the injury they were treating. She saw it, and she knew. "Doctor," she said quietly, "not now." "Doctor, you need to—" "I said not now!" The monitor spiked. The general's blood pressure dropped. His oxygen levels plummeted. "We're losing him," someone yelled. Hale's face was white. His hands shook. He looked at the open chest, at the clamps, at the blood, and for the first time in his career, he had no idea what to do. "Call it," he said, voice hollow. "Time of—" "Stop." Claire's voice cut through the room like a blade. Everyone turned. She stepped forward, her eyes locked on the general's body. "You're treating the wrong injury." Hale stared at her. "What?" "There's a secondary wound. Under the left shoulder. You've been trying to control the bleed in the chest, but the real damage is posterior. Every time you compress, you're pushing blood into the wrong cavity." Hale's mouth opened, closed. "That's impossible." "Check it." One of the residents moved instinctively, shifting the general's torso just slightly. And there it was. A small, jagged entry wound, almost invisible beneath the shoulder blade. The kind of injury that wouldn't show on a rapid field assessment. The kind that would kill you slowly, quietly, while everyone was looking somewhere else. Hale's face went gray. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered. Claire didn't wait for permission. She moved to the table, gloved hands already reaching. "I need a retractor and a vascular clamp. Now." They handed it to her. She worked fast. No hesitation. No wasted motion. She isolated the bleeding vessel, clamped it, sutured it, and backed out in less than 3 minutes. The monitor stabilized. The general's heart rate slowed. His oxygen levels climbed. The room exhaled. Hale stood frozen, staring at the screen, then at Claire, then back at the screen. "Who the hell are you?" he asked quietly. Claire stripped off her gloves and dropped them in the waste bin. "Nobody important." She walked out before he could respond. But the damage was done. By the next morning, the entire base knew what had happened. The story spread fast. How a low-level nurse had saved a general's life while the head surgeon stood there helpless. How she'd spotted an injury no one else had seen. How she'd operated with a precision that didn't match her rank, her role, or her records. People started asking questions, and Claire knew that was the worst thing that could happen. She tried to keep her head down. She showed up for her shifts, followed orders, stayed quiet. But the looks had changed. The whispers followed her down the hallways. The other nurses watched her differently now. The doctors didn't dismiss her anymore. They avoided her. Hale didn't speak to her at all. 3 days later, she was called into the administrative office. The woman behind the desk was Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Voss, the hospital's executive officer. She was in her early 50s, sharp-eyed, and had a reputation for cutting through nonsense with surgical efficiency. "Sit down, Whitaker," Voss said without looking up from her tablet. Claire sat. Voss tapped the screen a few times, then set it down. "You've been here 8 months. Your file says you completed nursing school in Vermont. Civilian background. No prior military service, no trauma experience, no advanced certifications." Claire said nothing. "So explain to me," Voss continued, leaning forward, "how a civilian nurse with zero combat medicine training just performed a vascular repair under fire that most of our senior surgeons wouldn't have attempted." Claire met her gaze. "I saw what needed to be done." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." Voss studied her for a long moment. "I don't like mysteries, Whitaker, and you're starting to look like one." "I'm not." "Then where did you learn to work like that?" Claire's jaw tightened. "I read a lot." Voss didn't smile. "You're lying." "I'm not." "Then prove it. Let me pull your full records. Let me see where you really came from." Claire's hands curled into fists in her lap. "I'd rather not." "That's not how this works." "I know." Voss leaned back, arms crossed. "You're hiding something, and if it turns out you falsified your credentials, you're done. Not just here, everywhere." Claire stood. "Am I dismissed?" Voss's eyes narrowed. "You're on thin ice, Whitaker. One more stunt like that, and I'll have you pulled from the floor permanently." Claire nodded once and left. She made it halfway down the hall before her hands started shaking. She ducked into a supply closet, closed the door, and leaned against the wall, breathing slowly, counting to 10, forcing the panic back down. She'd been careful. She'd been so careful. But it was starting to unravel. And if they dug deep enough, they'd find the truth. They'd find out who she really was. And then everything she'd built, every lie, every safe, quiet day, would collapse. The next 72 hours passed in a haze. Claire kept to herself. She worked her shifts without incident. She avoided the OR. She spoke only when spoken to. But the tension was building. She could feel it in the way people looked at her, in the way conversations stopped when she entered a room, in the way Hale's residents whispered behind her back. And then, on Monday morning, the alarms went off. Not the fire alarm, not the drill alarm, the mass casualty alarm, the one that meant something catastrophic had just happened. Claire was in the break room when the loudspeaker crackled to life. "All personnel to Trauma Bay 1. Repeat. All personnel to Trauma Bay 1. Multiple critical incoming. ETA 2 minutes." She was on her feet before the announcement finished. The hallway was chaos. Doctors running, nurses scrambling, orderlies wheeling crash carts toward the trauma wing. Claire followed the flow, her mind already shifting into gear, her body moving on instinct. She reached the bay just as the first stretcher crashed through the doors. The patient was a woman, late 30s, uniform scorched, face pale, blood everywhere. Behind her came 3 more stretchers, then 5, then 10. The room flooded with bodies, voices, equipment. "What happened?" someone shouted. "Convoy hit an IED outside the gate," a medic yelled back. "Multiple casualties, at least 4 critical." Claire grabbed gloves from the nearest cart and moved toward the closest table. The patient was a young man, maybe 22, with a sucking chest wound and a leg that was barely attached below the knee. Hale appeared beside her, already barking orders. "Get a chest tube in him, now!" Claire moved without thinking. She prepped the site, made the incision, and slid the tube into place. The patient gasped. His oxygen levels stabilized. Hale glanced at her, then moved to the next table. For the next 2 hours, Claire worked without stopping. She sutured. She intubated. She held pressure on wounds that shouldn't have been survivable. She moved between tables like a machine, her hands steady, her mind clear. And no one told her to stop, because they needed her. When the last patient was stabilized and the chaos finally settled, Claire stepped back, peeled off her gloves, and realized her scrubs were soaked in blood. Hale was standing across the room, staring at her. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. She'd just saved 6 lives in front of him. And he knew, everyone knew, that she wasn't just a nurse. She was something else, something they didn't understand. And that terrified them. Later that night, as Claire sat alone in the locker room, her phone buzzed. A single text. No name, just a number she didn't recognize. "We need to talk, tomorrow, 800, conference room B, don't be late." She stared at the screen, then she deleted the message. But deep down, she knew. They were coming for her. She didn't sleep. She sat on the edge of her bed in the barracks, staring at the wall, watching the numbers on the clock creep toward dawn. Her hands still smelled like antiseptic. Her scrubs were in a bag by the door, stiff with dried blood. At 7:45, she put on a clean uniform and walked across the base. The morning was cold, the sky a flat gray that pressed down like a lid. She passed soldiers heading to the mess hall, a group of nurses smoking near the medical wing, a jeep rolling toward the gate. No one looked at her. No one ever did. Conference room B was on the second floor of the administrative building, tucked at the end of a hallway that smelled like old coffee and floor wax. The door was closed. Claire stood outside for a moment, hand on the knob, then pushed it open. Lieutenant Colonel Voss sat at the head of the table. Dr. Hale sat to her right. And next to him, arms crossed, was a man Claire had never seen before. He was older, maybe 60, with steel gray hair cut tight to his scalp, and the kind of face that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. His uniform was spotless, 3 stars on his shoulder, general rank. Claire's stomach dropped. "Sit down, Whitaker," Voss said. Claire sat. The general didn't introduce himself. He just looked at her, eyes sharp and cold, like he was reading a report written on her face. "I'm General Lawrence Trask," he said finally. "I oversee medical operations for the entire NATO Southern Command. Do you know why I'm here?" "No, sir." "Because 6 people are alive this morning who shouldn't be. And the only reason they're breathing is because of you." Claire said nothing. Trask leaned forward. "I've reviewed the footage from the trauma bay. I've spoken to the attending physicians. I've read every incident report from the last 72 hours. And every single one of them says the same thing. You performed advanced combat medicine that shouldn't be in your skill set." "I did what I was trained to do." "Trained where?" Voss cut in. "Because your file says you went to a community nursing program in Burlington. No trauma rotations, no surgical experience, no military background." Claire met her gaze. "I learned on the job." "Bullshit," Hale said quietly. The room went still. Hale turned to face her, his expression carved from stone. "I've been doing this for 20 years. I know what training looks like. I know what instinct looks like. And what you did yesterday wasn't either. That was muscle memory. That was experience. That was someone who's done this 100 times before." Claire's jaw tightened. "I got lucky." 6 times in a row?" "Yes." Trask slammed his hand on the table. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. "Enough," he said. "I don't have time for games. You're going to tell me the truth, or I'm going to pull your entire personnel file, run a full background investigation, and dig until I find it myself. So let's make this simple. Where did you serve?" Claire's hands curled into fists under the table. "I didn't." "Then where did you learn combat medicine?" "I told you, on the job." Trask's eyes narrowed. "You're lying." "I'm not." Voss stood. "General, with your permission, I'd like to place Nurse Whitaker on administrative leave pending a full review of her credentials." "Denied," Trask said. He didn't take his eyes off Claire. "She stays on the floor, but she doesn't work alone. Every shift she's shadowed by a senior attending. Every procedure gets reviewed, and if I find out she's hiding something that puts patients at risk, she's done. Understood?" Claire nodded. "Good, now get out." She stood and walked to the door. "Whitaker," Trask said. She stopped. "I don't know what you're running from, but whatever it is, it's going to catch up to you. And when it does, you better hope it doesn't blow back on my hospital." Claire didn't answer. She left. The hallway felt longer on the way out. Her footsteps echoed. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She made it to the stairwell before her legs gave out, and she sat down hard on the top step, head in her hands, breathing through the nausea. They were close. Too close. She'd been careful. She'd changed her name, scrubbed her records, buried everything that connected her to the person she used to be. But they were digging now, and if they dug deep enough, they'd find the military service records, the deployment logs, the commendations, the discharge papers. They'd find out she wasn't just a nurse. She was a decorated combat medic who'd spent 3 years in active war zones, who'd saved over 200 lives under fire, who'd been honorably discharged after a mission went sideways and her entire unit was killed, except her. They'd find out she'd walked away from all of it because she couldn't stand the weight of being the only one who survived, and then they'd ask why she lied. And she wouldn't have an answer that would save her. She forced herself to stand. She went back to work. The next 2 weeks were a slow grind. Every shift, a senior doctor shadowed her. Every decision she made was questioned. Every time she reached for an instrument, someone asked why. It was suffocating. It was humiliating. It was exactly what Voss wanted. But Claire kept her head down. She followed orders. She didn't argue. She became invisible again. And slowly, the attention faded. Hale stopped glaring at her. The residents stopped whispering. Voss moved on to other problems. The base settled back into its routine, and Claire slipped back into the background where she belonged. She thought she was safe. Then the second convoy hit. It was a Tuesday, late afternoon. Claire was restocking the OR when the alarms went off again. Mass casualty, inbound, ETA, 4 minutes. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed gloves and ran. The trauma bay was already packed when she arrived. Medics were wheeling in stretchers, shouting vitals, calling for blood. The air smelled like smoke and burned metal. Claire moved to the nearest table. The patient was a man in his 30s, unconscious, his left arm mangled below the elbow. She started an IV line, called for O negative, and began cutting away his sleeve. "Whitaker!" She looked up. Hale was across the room, hands deep in another patient's chest. "I need you over here, now." She left the table and ran. The patient on Hale's table was younger, maybe 25, with a gaping wound in his abdomen and blood pouring out faster than they could replace it. "I can't find the bleeder," Hale said, voice tight. "It's somewhere in the mesentery, but I can't isolate it." Claire looked at the wound. The tissue was shredded, the anatomy distorted. But she'd seen this before. She knew where to look. "Retract the small bowel," she said. "Lateral to the superior mesenteric artery. It's a branch vessel." Hale hesitated. Then he moved. He retracted. He found it. "Jesus," he muttered. He clamped it. The bleeding stopped. The patient stabilized. Hale looked at her. "How did you know?" "I've seen it before." "Where?" Claire didn't answer. She moved back to her table, but Hale followed. "Whitaker, I'm asking you a direct question. Where have you seen this before?" "I don't remember." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting." Hale grabbed her arm. "I'm not letting this go. You don't just know this stuff. You don't just see things no one else can see. You've done this before. You've worked in a combat zone, haven't you?" Claire pulled her arm free. "Let it go, doctor." "No." "Then I can't help you." She walked away. But the damage was done. By the end of the shift, Hale had filed a formal inquiry. By the next morning, Voss had escalated it to Trask. And by that afternoon, Claire was sitting in the same conference room, across from the same 3 people, answering the same questions she couldn't afford to answer. "This is your last chance," Trask said. "Tell me the truth, or I pull you off the floor permanently." Claire stared at the table. "I don't have anything to say." Voss leaned forward. "Then you're suspended, effective immediately. Turn in your badge and wait for the investigation to conclude." Claire stood. She pulled her ID from her pocket and set it on the table. "Thank you for the opportunity," she said quietly. Then she left. She made it back to the barracks before the first wave of anger hit. Not at them. At herself. For thinking she could stay invisible. For believing she could outrun what she was. For letting herself care enough about Morrison, about those 6 soldiers, about any of them, that she'd broken her own rules. She sat on her bunk and stared at her duffel bag in the corner. Everything she owned fit inside it. That was deliberate. She'd learned long ago not to accumulate weight. Not things, not people, not memories. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Meet me at the East Fence, 2100 hours. Come alone." Claire deleted it. She wasn't interested in games. 10 minutes later, it buzzed again. "It's about your discharge papers, and who's been asking about them." Her blood went cold. She grabbed her jacket and left. The East Fence bordered the ammunition depot, a stretch of chain link and razor wire that separated the medical wing from the ordnance storage. No one came here after dark. No cameras, no patrols, just empty ground and shadows. Claire arrived at 20:55. She waited. At exactly 2100, a figure stepped out from behind the storage shed. Male, tall, military posture. As he came closer, she recognized him. Captain Yates, Emergency Operations. "You came," he said. "You mentioned my discharge papers." Yates stopped a few feet away, hands in his pockets. "Someone's been digging into your background, deep, deeper than a standard review. They're pulling records from outside channels." "Who?" "I don't know, but whoever it is has clearance I've never seen before. They requested your full military service file 3 days ago. The request came from outside NATO command." Claire's stomach twisted. "What did they find?" "Nothing yet. Your records are sealed under a different name, but it's only a matter of time." "Why are you telling me this?" Yates stepped closer. "Because I was in Kandahar in 2019. I was part of the medevac unit that pulled you out after the ambush. I know who you are. I know what you did. And I know why you left." Claire's throat tightened. "Then you know I can't be here. I know you shouldn't have to hide." He pulled a folded paper from his jacket and handed it to her. "This is the name of the person who requested your file. I can't stop them, but I can give you a head start." Claire unfolded the paper. The name meant nothing to her. Dr. Elliot Crane, Department of Defense, Medical Ethics Division. "What does he want?" "I don't know, but he's flying in tomorrow, and the first person he's scheduled to meet with is Voss." Claire folded the paper and shoved it in her pocket. "Thanks. Whitaker, I have to go." She turned and walked away before he could say anything else. She didn't go back to the barracks. She went to the records office. It was closed, locked, dark. She picked the lock in under 30 seconds and slipped inside. The filing cabinets were old, the kind with physical folders and paper trails. She found the personnel section, flipped through the tabs, and pulled her file. It was thin. Too thin. Just the basics. Name, date of hire, nursing credentials. Nothing else. She opened it and froze. Someone had already been through it. Pages were missing. The edges were uneven where they'd been torn out, and clipped to the inside cover was a handwritten note. "We need to talk tomorrow, 600, rooftop access, building 7. Don't tell anyone." No signature. Claire shoved the file back and left. She didn't sleep that night either. She sat in the dark, running through scenarios, weighing options, trying to figure out who knew what and how much time she had left. At 05:45, she climbed the service ladder to the roof of Building 7. The sun hadn't risen yet. The base was still dark, still quiet. Claire stepped onto the gravel rooftop and saw a figure standing near the edge, looking out over the compound. It was Morrison. He turned when he heard her footsteps. "You came," he said. "You left the note?" "I did." Claire stopped a few feet away. "You should be in recovery." "I was. Until I heard you'd been suspended." He took a step closer. "Why didn't you tell them?" "Tell them what?" "That you saved my life twice. That you're the reason I'm still standing. That you're the most qualified person in this entire hospital." Claire looked away. "It doesn't matter. It does to me. I don't need your gratitude. That's not why I'm here." Morrison reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. He handed it to her. "This is your real file. The one they've been looking for." Claire's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were her deployment records, her commendations, her medical certifications, the after-action report from the ambush, the names of her unit, all of them crossed out, KIA, except hers. "How did you get this?" she whispered. "I made a call. Someone owed me a favor." He paused. "I read it. All of it. And I need to ask you something." Claire closed the folder. "Don't." "Why did you walk away?" "Because I couldn't carry it anymore." "Carry what?" "The weight of being the only one left." Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You think running makes it lighter?" Claire looked at him. "It did. For a while." "And now?" She didn't answer. Morrison took the folder back. "Dr. Crane is coming today. He's going to ask questions. He's going to want answers. And if you keep hiding, he's going to assume the worst. Let him." "I won't." Morrison tucked the folder under his arm. "You saved my life. Twice, and I'm not going to let them destroy you for it. You can't stop them." "Watch me." He walked past her, heading for the ladder. "General," Claire said. He stopped. "Why does it matter to you?" Morrison looked back at her. "Because the last person who saved my life like that was my son, and he didn't make it home." He climbed down. Claire stood alone on the roof, watching the sun break over the horizon, and for the first time in years, she let herself feel the weight she'd been carrying. It didn't get lighter, but it didn't crush her either. At 800, she walked into the hospital. She went straight to the trauma bay, put on fresh scrubs, and started prepping an OR. A nurse looked at her. "Whitaker, you're suspended." "Not anymore. Voss is going to lose her mind." "Let her." Claire scrubbed in. She pulled on gloves. She stepped up to the table, and she got back to work. 20 minutes later, Voss burst through the doors, red-faced and furious. "Whitaker, what the hell do you think you're doing?" "My job." "You're suspended. Take it up with General Morrison. He reinstated me 10 minutes ago." Voss's mouth opened, closed. "He can't do that." "He already did." Voss looked around the room. Every nurse, every tech, every resident was watching. She turned back to Claire. "This isn't over." "I know," Voss stormed out. Claire kept working. At 1,000 hours, Dr. Crane arrived. Claire was in the middle of a procedure when Voss knocked on the OR window and gestured for her to come out. Claire finished suturing, stripped off her gloves, and stepped into the hallway. Crane was younger than she expected. Mid-40s, glasses, a crisp suit that looked out of place on a military base. He extended his hand. "Nurse Whitaker, I'm Dr. Elliot Crane. I've been looking forward to meeting you." Claire didn't shake his hand. "Why?" Crane smiled. "Because you're an anomaly, and I specialize in anomalies." "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do." He gestured down the hall. "Let's take a walk." They walked. Crane didn't speak until they were outside, away from the building, standing near the perimeter fence. "I've spent the last 6 months investigating unauthorized medical personnel operating in NATO facilities," he said. "People with fake credentials, people with hidden backgrounds, people who shouldn't be here." Claire's jaw tightened. "And you think I'm one of them?" "I know you are." Crane pulled a tablet from his bag and showed her the screen. It was her face, her real face, from her deployment photo. Staff Sergeant Claire Renner, combat medic. 3 tours. 2 Bronze Stars, honorable discharge in 2020. Claire stared at the screen. "That's not me." "Yes, it is. You changed your name. You falsified your credentials. You've been working under a false identity for 4 years. Why does it matter?" Crane lowered the tablet. "Because I need to know if you're hiding from something, or if you're hiding because of something." Claire met his eyes. "What's the difference?" "Intent." She laughed, bitter and sharp. "You want to know my intent? I wanted to stop watching people die. I wanted to stop carrying bodies. I wanted to stop being the one who survived. So I walked away. I became someone else. And I kept saving lives without the weight of a uniform. That's my intent." Crane studied her for a long moment. Then he put the tablet away. "You could have come back. You could have asked for reassignment. You could have done this the right way. There is no right way, not when the system's broken. So you broke it further. I survived it." Crane nodded slowly. "Fair enough." He turned to leave, then stopped. "For what it's worth, Whitaker, or Renner, or whoever you decide to be, you're one of the best field medics I've ever seen on paper, and I've read a lot of files. Then why are you here?" "Because someone reported you, someone who thinks you're dangerous." Claire's blood ran cold. "Who?" Crane didn't answer. He just walked away. Claire stood there, fists clenched, pulse hammering. Someone had reported her. Someone wanted her gone. And she had a very good idea who. She found Hale in his office 20 minutes later. He was at his desk, reviewing charts, a cup of coffee cooling beside his keyboard. "We need to talk," Claire said. Hale didn't look up. "I'm busy. You reported me." That got his attention. He set down his pen and leaned back in his chair. "I filed a formal inquiry. That's not the same thing. You knew it would escalate." "I knew it should." Claire stepped closer. "Why?" "Because you're a liability. You show up out of nowhere with skills you shouldn't have, credentials that don't match your training, and a complete refusal to explain yourself. That's a red flag. A big one." I saved lives. That doesn't make you trustworthy. Claire's hands curled into fists. You want to know the truth? Fine, I'm a combat medic. I spent 3 years in war zones saving soldiers like the ones you couldn't. I walked away because my entire unit died. And I didn't. And I came here because I thought I could keep doing what I was good at without the weight of a rank or a flag or a body count. That's the truth. Are you satisfied? Hale stared at her. No. Why not? Because if you're that good, you shouldn't be here. You should be training people, leading people, not hiding in a supply closet pretending to be less than you are. Claire shook her head. You don't get it. Then explain it to me. I can't. Hale stood. Then we're done. He walked past her, heading for the door. Hale, Claire said. He stopped. If you ever put another target on my back, I'll make sure everyone knows how many patients you've lost because you were too arrogant to listen. Hale turned. His face was pale. Is that a threat? It's a promise. He left without another word. Claire stood in the empty office, breathing hard, her mind racing. She'd burned the bridge, she'd made an enemy, and she had no idea what came next. Her phone buzzed. Another text. Unknown number. Crane's meeting with Trask in 10 minutes. If you want to know who reported you, be in the observation room above Conference B. Claire didn't hesitate. She ran. The observation room was a narrow space above the conference room, separated by a two-way mirror. It was used for training, for monitoring sensitive meetings, for watching without being seen. Claire slipped inside and looked down. Trask was already seated. Voss was beside him, and across from them, calm and composed, was Dr. Crane. Thank you for meeting with me on short notice, Crane said. Trask nodded. You said this was urgent. It is. I've completed my investigation into Nurse Whitaker, and I need to inform you that her credentials are falsified. She's been operating under a false identity. Voss leaned forward. I knew it. Trask's expression didn't change. What are you recommending? Immediate termination, and a formal review of how she was hired in the first place. Claire's stomach twisted. Trask was quiet for a moment. Then he said, No. Crane blinked. Excuse me? I said no. She's not being terminated. Voss's mouth fell open. General, she lied about everything. She did, and she also saved 6 lives in a single shift. She identified injuries that my best surgeons missed. She operated under fire with precision I haven't seen in 20 years. So no, she's not being terminated. Crane's jaw tightened. General, with all due respect, this sets a dangerous precedent. I don't care. You should. Because the person who reported her has significant influence, and they're not going to let this go. Trask leaned forward. Who reported her? Crane hesitated. Then he said, Dr. Marcus Hale. The room went silent. Claire's hands gripped the railing. Hale. It was always Hale. Trask stood. Bring him in, now. 5 minutes later, Hale walked into the conference room. He looked calm, confident, like he'd already won. General, he said, thank you for— Sit down, Trask said. Hale sat. Trask didn't. He stood over him, arms crossed, face like granite. You reported Nurse Whitaker to Dr. Crane. I did, because she's a fraud. She's a decorated combat medic with more field experience than half this hospital combined. Hale's confidence faltered. She lied about her credentials. So did you. The room froze. Hale's face went white. What? Trask pulled a folder from his briefcase and dropped it on the table. I had your records pulled too. Turns out you've been inflating your surgical success rates for the last 3 years. Omitting complications, hiding malpractice settlements. Should I keep going? Hale's mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. Trask leaned down, his voice low and deadly. You went after Whitaker because she made you look incompetent. And instead of learning from her, you tried to destroy her. That's not medicine, that's ego. And I don't tolerate ego in my hospital. Hale stood. You can't— You're suspended, pending a full investigation. And if I find out you've been covering up patient harm, you're done. Not just here. Everywhere. Hale's face turned red. He looked at Voss, at Crane, at Trask. Then he turned and walked out. Above them, Claire stood in the observation room, hands shaking, heart pounding. It was over. Hale was gone. She'd won. But the victory felt hollow because she knew the cost. Her phone buzzed one more time. She looked at the screen. Emergency. Morrison's crashing. Get to recovery. Now. Claire was already running before the phone hit her pocket. She slammed through the observation room door, took the stairs 3 at a time, and burst into the recovery wing 30 seconds later. Nurses were scrambling. Alarms shrieked from every direction. A crash cart sat abandoned in the hallway. Its contents spilled across the floor. Room 12 was at the end of the corridor. The door was open. Inside, Morrison lay motionless on the bed, his chest barely moving, his face the color of ash. A nurse was leaning over him, pressing 2 fingers to his neck. No pulse, she said. Claire shoved her aside. Start compressions. The nurse hesitated. He's DNR. I don't care. Start compressions. The nurse obeyed. Claire grabbed the defibrillator from the wall, ripped open Morrison's gown, and slapped the pads onto his chest. The monitor showed a flat line. Charging, clear. The nurse stepped back. Claire hit the button. Morrison's body jerked. The line stayed flat. Again, clear. Another shock. Nothing. Claire's hands moved on autopilot. She started an IV line, pushed epinephrine, checked his airway. His pupils were fixed and dilated. His skin was cold. How long has he been down? Claire asked. We don't know. We found him like this 2 minutes ago. 2 minutes, maybe 3. That was the edge of the window. Any longer, and the brain started dying. Claire pushed another round of epi, started compressions herself, counting under her breath. 15, 16, 17. The monitor beeped. A single blip. Then another. I've got a rhythm, the nurse said. Claire didn't stop. She kept compressing, kept pushing, kept dragging him back from the edge. The rhythm strengthened, stabilized. Morrison's chest rose on its own. Claire stepped back, breathing hard, her hands shaking. Morrison's eyes fluttered open. He looked at her, confused, disoriented. What happened? He rasped. You coded. Don't talk. How long was I out? Long enough. Now shut up and let me work. She checked his vitals, ran a 12-lead EKG, pulled blood for labs. Everything pointed to the same thing, a massive pulmonary embolism. A clot had broken loose, traveled to his lungs, and nearly killed him. You need surgery, Claire said. Now. Morrison shook his head weakly. No, I'm done with surgeries. You don't get a choice. I'm not doing it. Claire leaned down, her face inches from his. You're going to die if you don't. And I didn't drag you back just so you could give up. Morrison stared at her, then he closed his eyes. Fine. Do it. Claire turned to the nurse. Get him to OR1. Page Dr. Reyes. Tell her it's a PE and she needs to move now. The nurse ran. Claire stayed with Morrison as they wheeled him down the hall. She kept one hand on his wrist, monitoring his pulse, watching the monitor, counting every beat. They reached the OR. Dr. Sylvia Reyes was already scrubbing in, her face tight with focus. She was one of the few surgeons Claire actually respected, quick, precise, and willing to admit when she didn't know something. Talk to me, Reyes said. Massive PE. He coded in recovery. I got him back, but he's unstable. You've got maybe an hour before he crashes again. Reyes nodded. I'll need you in there. I'm suspended. Not anymore, you're not. Trask reinstated you 10 minutes ago. Now scrub in. Claire didn't argue. She scrubbed, gloved up, and stepped into the OR. Morrison was already under. Reyes made the first incision, opening his chest with controlled aggression. Claire assisted, retracting tissue, suctioning blood, calling out vitals as the numbers shifted. Pressure's dropping, Claire said. I see it. Clamp. Claire handed it over. Reyes isolated the pulmonary artery, found the clot, a thick, dark mass blocking the entire vessel, and extracted it with a pair of forceps. The monitor beeped. Morrison's pressure climbed. That's it, Reyes said. Close him up. Claire started suturing. Her hands moved fast, efficient, muscle memory from 100 battlefield surgeries. She didn't think. She just worked. 20 minutes later, Morrison was stable. Reyes stripped off her gloves and looked at Claire. Where did you learn to work like that? Claire didn't answer. Reyes didn't push. She just nodded and left. Claire stayed with Morrison until he was moved back to recovery. She checked his vitals one more time, adjusted his IV, and stepped into the hallway. Trask was waiting. You saved him again, he said. I did my job. No, you did more than that. Trask gestured down the hall. Walk with me. They walked. Trask didn't speak until they were outside, standing near the same fence where she'd met Yates. I read your real file, Trask said. Claire's stomach tightened. And? And I understand why you left. I also understand why you came back. He paused. But I need to know if you're staying. I don't know. That's not good enough. I'm restructuring this hospital. I'm cleaning house. And I need people I can trust. People who put patients first. People like you. Claire shook her head. You don't want me. Why not? Because I'm a liability. You said it yourself. I was wrong. Trask turned to face her. You're not a liability. You're an asset. And I'm offering you a position. Senior trauma specialist. Full authority. No more shadows. No more questions. Claire stared at him. Why? Because this hospital needs you. And because I'm tired of watching ego kill people. She looked away. I need time. You've got 24 hours. After that, the offer's gone. He walked away. Claire stood alone, staring at the fence, at the base beyond it, at the life she'd been running from for 4 years. She didn't know what to do. So she went back to work. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Claire moved between patients, checked charts, restocked supplies. She avoided Hale. She avoided Voss. She avoided everyone who might ask questions she didn't want to answer. At 1800 hours, she was in the supply room when the lights went out. Not just the room, the entire building. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in dim red. Claire stepped into the hallway. Nurses were looking around, confused. Somewhere, a backup generator rumbled to life. Then the alarm started. Not the medical alarms, the base-wide alert. The one that meant hostile contact. Claire's pulse spiked. She ran to the nearest window and looked out. The perimeter lights were off. The guard towers were dark. And in the distance, near the north gate, she saw movement. Figures. Fast. Low to the ground. Too many to count. Her phone buzzed. A text from Yates. Base is under attack. Get to the bunker. Now. Claire didn't move. She looked back down the hall toward the recovery wing, toward Morrison. He was still sedated, still vulnerable. She ran. The recovery wing was chaos. Nurses were trying to evacuate patients, but there weren't enough hands, weren't enough stretchers. An orderly was shouting into a radio, calling for backup that wasn't coming. Claire grabbed the nearest nurse. Where's Morrison? Room 12. But we can't move him. He's too unstable. Then I'll move him. Claire ran to the room. Morrison was unconscious, intubated, hooked to a dozen monitors. She disconnected the non-essential lines, grabbed the IV pole, and started wheeling him toward the exit. The building shook. An explosion. Close. The walls rattled. Dust fell from the ceiling. Claire kept moving. She reached the hallway just as the lights went out completely. The emergency lighting flickered, died, and left her in total darkness. She stopped. Listened. Footsteps. Heavy. Multiple people. Coming closer. Claire's hand went to her pocket. She carried a scalpel there, always, out of habit. She pulled it out now, gripping it tight. The footsteps stopped. A voice cut through the darkness. Cold. Precise. General Morrison, we know you're here, and we know the nurse is with you. Claire's blood ran cold. How did they know? We're not here to hurt you, the voice continued. We just need the general. Hand him over, and you can walk away. Claire didn't answer. She gripped the IV pole with one hand, the scalpel with the other, and tried to think. There were at least 3 of them. Maybe more. She was alone. Unarmed except for a blade that was useless beyond arm's reach, and Morrison was unconscious, unable to move, unable to fight. The odds were impossible, but she'd faced impossible before. Last chance, the voice said. Step away from the general. Claire tightened her grip on the IV pole. Then she slammed it forward. The pole hit something solid. A grunt. A stumble. Claire didn't wait. She kicked out, felt her boot connect with a knee, heard a curse. She spun, grabbed Morrison's bed and shoved it down the hallway as hard as she could. The bed rolled. Fast. Too fast. It hit a wall with a crash. Claire ran after it, grabbed the frame, and kept pushing. Behind her, the footsteps started again. Faster now. Angrier. She reached the stairwell. The door was locked. No, 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 no. She kicked it. The lock held. The footsteps were right behind her. Claire turned, scalpel raised. A flashlight snapped on, blinding her. "Don't move!" She didn't. She couldn't see. Couldn't run. Couldn't fight. The light shifted. She saw the outline of a man. Military gear. Body armor. A rifle pointed at her chest. "Put down the blade," he said. Claire didn't. "I said put it down." "No." The man stepped closer. "You're protecting a dead man. He's not worth it." "You don't get to decide that." The man tilted his head. "You're the medic, the one who saved him." Claire said nothing. "We don't want you. We just want him. Step aside." "Not happening." The man sighed. "Then you're both coming with us." He raised the rifle, and then the stairwell door exploded open. A figure charged through fast and brutal. A fist connected with the gunman's jaw. The rifle clattered to the floor. The flashlight spun, casting wild shadows across the walls. Claire grabbed Morrison's bed and pulled it back, away from the fight. The newcomer was military. She could tell by the way he moved. Efficient, controlled, lethal. He disarmed the second attacker, dropped him with an elbow to the temple, and turned to face the third. The third man ran. The newcomer didn't chase. He turned to Claire, breathing hard, and she recognized him. Captain Yates. "You okay?" he asked. Claire nodded. "We need to move, now." He grabbed the other side of Morrison's bed, and together they ran. They made it to the ground floor. The main hallway was filled with smoke. Fire alarms screamed. Somewhere, glass shattered. "Where are we going?" Claire shouted. "Bunker, east side." They pushed through the smoke, the chaos, the bodies running in every direction. Claire kept one hand on Morrison's IV line, making sure it didn't snag, didn't pull loose. They reached the bunker entrance. A soldier stood guard, rifle raised. "Captain Yates, I've got General Morrison. Open the door." The soldier hesitated, then he stepped aside. The door opened. Yates and Claire pushed the bed inside. The bunker was packed. Nurses, doctors, patients, all of them crammed into a concrete room that smelled like sweat and fear. Claire checked Morrison's vitals. Still stable, still breathing. Yates grabbed her arm. "How did they know where he was?" "I don't know." "Someone told them. Someone on this base gave them his location." Claire's mind raced. "Who?" Yates didn't answer. He was looking at something across the room. Claire followed his gaze. Voss was standing near the back, talking into a radio, her face pale. "No," Claire whispered. Yates's jaw tightened. "Stay here." He walked over to Voss. Claire couldn't hear what he said, but she saw Voss's reaction. Shock, then anger, then something that looked like panic. Yates grabbed the radio. Voss tried to pull it back. They struggled. The radio hit the floor. Everyone in the bunker turned to watch. Yates picked up the radio and listened. His face went white. He looked at Claire, and she knew. It wasn't Voss. It was someone else. Someone closer. Yates crossed the room in 3 strides and stopped in front of a young nurse standing near the medical supplies. "What did you do?" he asked quietly. The nurse's face crumpled. "I didn't have a choice." "What did you do?" "They said they'd kill my family. They said if I didn't tell them where the general was, they'd—" Yates grabbed her by the collar. "You just killed everyone in this bunker." The nurse started crying. Claire stepped forward. "What are you talking about?" Yates released the nurse and turned to face the room. "They know we're here. They know exactly where we are. And they're coming." The bunker went silent, then the door exploded. The blast threw Claire backward. Her ears rang. Smoke filled the room. People were screaming, scrambling, running. Through the smoke, figures appeared. Armed, masked, moving with military precision. Claire grabbed Morrison's bed and tried to pull it toward the back of the bunker. A hand caught her shoulder. She spun, scalpel raised. It was Reyes. "This way?" Reyes said. She pulled Claire toward a side corridor, a narrow passage that led deeper into the bunker. They ran. Behind them, gunfire erupted. Short, controlled bursts. Claire didn't look back. They reached a service tunnel. Reyes kicked open a panel and shoved Claire inside. "Go. I'll hold them off." "You can't." "Go!" Claire went. She pulled Morrison's bed into the tunnel, the wheels scraping against concrete, the monitors beeping frantically. The tunnel was dark, narrow. She could barely see, but she kept moving, one hand on the bed, the other on the wall, feeling her way forward. Behind her, the gunfire stopped. Silence. Then footsteps. Claire moved faster. The tunnel opened into a storage room, old medical supplies, broken equipment, a single exit on the far side. Claire pushed the bed toward it. The door was locked. She kicked it. The lock held. The footsteps were getting closer. Claire looked around. No weapons, no tools, nothing, except Morrison. She leaned down, her voice low and urgent. "General, if you can hear me, I need you to wake up, now." Morrison didn't move. The footsteps stopped. A voice echoed down the tunnel. "End of the line, Whitaker." Claire turned. A figure stepped into the storage room. Tall, armed, face hidden behind a tactical mask. He raised his rifle. "Step away from the general." Claire stood in front of the bed. "No." The figure tilted his head. "You really want to die for him?" "I've died for worse." The figure paused. Then he lowered the rifle slightly. "You're the medic, the one who keeps saving him." Claire didn't answer. "Why?" "Because that's what I do." The figure studied her. "You know he's not worth it, right? You know what he's done, the orders he's given, the people who've died because of him." Claire's jaw tightened. "I don't care." "You should." "I don't judge, I just save." The figure was quiet for a long moment. Then he raised the rifle again. "That's your mistake." He pulled the trigger. Claire felt the impact before she heard the sound. A punch to her shoulder, sharp and hot. She stumbled back, hit the wall, and slid to the floor. Blood spread across her scrubs. The figure stepped forward, rifle trained on Morrison. Claire tried to stand. Her legs wouldn't work. Her vision blurred. The figure aimed. And then Morrison opened his eyes. He looked at the figure, then at Claire. Then he smiled. "You're too late," Morrison said, his voice weak but clear. The figure froze. "What?" "She already told them. She already sent the message." The figure's head snapped toward Claire. "What message?" Claire's hand was in her pocket. Her fingers were wrapped around her phone. She'd pressed send 3 minutes ago. The message had gone to Trask, to Yates, to everyone who needed to know. The base wasn't under random attack, it was a targeted strike. And Morrison was the target, because he knew something worth killing for. The figure turned back to Morrison. "What did you tell her?" Morrison's smile widened. "Everything." The figure raised the rifle. A gunshot cracked through the room, but it didn't come from the figure. It came from behind him. The figure dropped. Claire looked up. Trask stood in the doorway, pistol raised, his face carved from stone. "Get her out of here," he said to someone behind him. Medics rushed in. They grabbed Claire, started an IV, applied pressure to her shoulder. She tried to speak. Couldn't. The last thing she saw before the darkness took her was Morrison, still smiling, still alive, and Trask staring down at the dead figure on the floor, his expression unreadable. Then everything went black. When Claire woke up, she was in a hospital bed. Not the field hospital. Somewhere else. Cleaner, quieter, civilian. Her shoulder was bandaged. An IV ran into her arm. Monitors beeped steadily beside her. Trask sat in a chair by the window. "You're awake," he said. Claire's throat was dry. "Where am I?" "Rome. Civilian hospital. You've been out for 18 hours. "Morrison?" "Alive. Stable. Under guard." Claire closed her eyes. "What happened?" Trask stood and walked to her bedside. "What happened is you uncovered a conspiracy, a deep one. Morrison wasn't just a target, he was a witness. He knew about illegal arms deals, black market operations, command-level corruption, and someone wanted him dead before he could talk." "Who?" Trask's face darkened. "We're still finding out, but it goes higher than you think." Claire's mind raced. The attack was coordinated from inside. Multiple people, multiple layers. It's going to take months to unravel. And the nurse? The one who gave them Morrison's location? In custody. She'll talk. Eventually. Claire stared at the ceiling. "I didn't know." "I know, but you saved him anyway, and that's why you're still alive." Trask pulled something from his jacket and set it on the bedside table. It was her real file. The one with her deployment records, her commendations, her truth. I'm offering you the position again, Trask said. Senior trauma specialist, full authority. But this time, I'm asking you as the person you really are, not the one you've been pretending to be. Claire looked at the file, then at Trask. I need time. You've got it, but when you decide, I need an answer, because this hospital needs you, and so does Morrison. He walked to the door. General, Claire said. He stopped. Thank you. Trask nodded, then he left. Claire lay in the bed staring at her file, at the name she'd buried. Staff Sergeant Claire Renner. She picked it up, opened it, and for the first time in 4 years, she didn't close it. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. We know who you are. We know what you did. And we're coming for you next. Claire stared at the screen. The words didn't change. They sat there, cold and precise, daring her to respond. She didn't. She deleted the message, powered off the phone, and shoved it under her pillow. Her shoulder throbbed. The IV line tugged at her arm. Outside the window, Rome sprawled in the afternoon light, indifferent and enormous. She closed her eyes and tried to think. Someone knew her real name. Someone knew where she was, and someone wanted her to know they were coming. The question was who, and the answer was probably going to get her killed. A knock at the door pulled her back. She opened her eyes. A nurse entered, checked her vitals, adjusted the IV drip, and left without a word. Claire watched her go, then swung her legs over the side of the bed. Her shoulders screamed in protest. She ignored it. She was halfway to the door when it opened again. Yates walked in, carrying a laptop bag and a paper cup of coffee that smelled burnt. You shouldn't be up, he said. I'm fine. You got shot. I've been shot before. Yates set the coffee on the table and pulled a chair closer. We need to talk. Claire sat back down on the bed. About what? About the people who want you dead. She didn't answer. Yates opened the laptop and turned it toward her. The screen showed a series of photographs. Military personnel, officers. Some she recognized, most she didn't. These are the people Morrison was planning to testify against, Yates said. Arms deals, black market contracts, command-level bribes, the kind of corruption that gets entire careers buried. Claire scanned the faces. What does this have to do with me? You saved Morrison, twice, which means you're the reason he's still alive to testify, and that makes you a problem. For who? Yates clicked to the next image. Claire's blood went cold. It was Hale. No, she said quietly. Yes. Yates leaned back. Hale wasn't just filing complaints because you made him look bad. He was working with someone who needed Morrison dead. And when Morrison survived, they needed a scapegoat, someone to blame, someone disposable. Me? You. Claire's hands curled into fists. Why would Hale do that? He's a surgeon. He's broke and desperate and willing to do anything to keep his career intact. Yates clicked to another file. Financial records. Bank statements. He's been taking money from a shell company for the last 18 months, a company that doesn't exist on paper but has ties to 3 different defense contractors under investigation for fraud. Claire stared at the numbers. How much? Enough to bury him if it goes public. Does Trask know? He knows, and he's already moving. Hale's under investigation. His accounts are frozen. His medical license is suspended pending review. But that's not the problem. Then what is? Yates clicked to the last image. A man Claire had never seen before. Mid-50s, civilian clothes, a face that could disappear in a crowd. Who's that? Victor Lansing, private security contractor, former Special Forces, currently running a network of operatives across 6 countries. And according to Morrison's testimony, he's the one coordinating the hits. Claire's pulse quickened. Hits plural? Morrison wasn't the only target. There were 3 others, all dead, all within the last 6 months, all killed before they could testify. And you think he's coming for me? I know he is. That text you got? That was him. Or someone working for him. He's tying up loose ends, and you're one of them. Claire looked at the screen, at Lansing's face, and felt something harden in her chest. What does Trask want me to do? Stay here. Stay hidden. Let us handle it. That's not going to work. It's the safest option. I don't care about safe. I care about finishing this. Yates closed the laptop. You can't finish this alone. I'm not planning to. She stood, ignoring the pain, and walked to the window. Below, the street was crowded with tourists, cars, people living normal lives. She envied them. "Where's Morrison now?" she asked. "Secure location. Military police. Round-the-clock protection." "And Hale?" "Detained. Awaiting formal charges." Claire turned back to Yates. "I want to talk to him." Yates frowned. "That's not a good idea." "I don't care. Set it up." Yates studied her for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. 2 hours later, Claire was in a car heading back toward the base. Her shoulder was wrapped tight, the wound still raw, but the pain was manageable. She'd taken enough ibuprofen to dull the edge, enough to function. The base was different now. Quieter. Tighter. Security checkpoints every 50 meters. Armed patrols, barriers. The kind of lockdown that happened when someone important almost died. Yates led her through the administrative building to a holding room in the basement. A single table. 2 chairs. No windows. Hale sat on one side, hands cuffed in front of him, his face hollow and gray. He looked up when Claire walked in. "You," he said. Claire sat down across from him. Yates stood by the door, arms crossed. "You tried to kill me," Claire said. Hale shook his head. "I didn't know they were going to—" "You gave them Morrison's location. You gave them mine. You facilitated a hit on a NATO general and endangered dozens of people. So don't tell me you didn't know." Hale's jaw tightened. "I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. Not when you're drowning." Hale leaned forward, his voice cracking. "I had debts. Medical malpractice settlements I couldn't pay. A divorce that took everything. And they came to me with an offer. Easy money, just a few names, a few locations. I thought—" "You thought it wouldn't matter," Claire finished. "You thought no one would connect it back to you." Hale's face crumpled. "I didn't want anyone to die. But they did. And more will if you don't talk." Hale looked away. "I can't." "Why not?" "Because Lansing has my daughter." The room went silent. Claire's stomach dropped. "What?" "My daughter. She's 16. She lives with her mother in Geneva. 3 weeks ago, she disappeared. No trace, no ransom, just a phone call telling me if I wanted to see her again, I'd do exactly what they said." Claire looked at Yates. He nodded. It was true. She turned back to Hale. "Why didn't you tell someone?" "Because they said if I did, they'd kill her." Hale's voice broke. "I had to choose. My daughter or Morrison, and I chose my daughter. Wouldn't you?" Claire didn't answer. Hale wiped his eyes. "I know what I did was wrong. I know people died because of me. But I can't lose her. She's all I have left." Claire stood. "Where is she?" "I don't know. They never told me." "Then how do you contact them?" Hale hesitated. Then he pulled a burner phone from his pocket and slid it across the table. "They call me. I don't call them." Claire picked up the phone. "When's the last time they called?" "This morning. They wanted to know if Morrison was dead. I told them I didn't know." "What did they say?" "That I had 48 hours to confirm it, or they'd kill her and come for me." Claire pocketed the phone. "I'm going to find your daughter. And when I do, you're going to testify. All of it. No deals. No protection. You're going to stand up in front of everyone and tell them exactly what you did." Hale's face went white. "They'll kill me." "Maybe, but at least you'll die with a spine." She walked out. Yates followed her into the hallway. "You can't go after Lansing. Watch me. Claire, he's a professional. He has resources. He has people. You're one person with a bullet wound." "I've worked with worse." Yates grabbed her arm. "This isn't a battlefield. You can't just—" "Then what do you want me to do? Sit in a hospital bed while a 16-year-old girl gets killed? While Lansing walks away? While everyone pretends this didn't happen?" Yates released her. "I want you to let us handle it." "You can't. Not fast enough. Not before he kills her." "So what's your plan?" Claire pulled out the burner phone. "I'm going to make him call." She walked back into the holding room. Hale looked up, confused. "Give me everything," Claire said. "Every detail, every location, every person you've ever talked to, and do it fast." Hale talked. He told her about the shell company, the account numbers, the drop sites, the names of the people who'd given him orders, the codes they used, the schedules they kept. Claire took notes on her phone, memorizing every word. When Hale finished, she stood. One more thing. If this phone rings and you don't answer, they'll know something's wrong. So you're going to answer, and you're going to tell them exactly what I tell you to say." Hale nodded. Claire left. Yates was waiting outside. "What are you doing?" "Setting a trap." "For who?" "Everyone." She handed Yates the notes. "Get this to Trask. Tell him to move on these locations within the next 12 hours. I want every account frozen, every contact detained, every safe house raided. And Lansing? He's mine." Yates didn't argue. He just nodded and left. Claire went back to the hospital. She changed into clean clothes, wrapped her shoulder tighter, and pulled on a jacket that hid the bandage. Then she sat down with the burner phone and waited. It rang 6 hours later. Claire answered. Hale's phone. Silence on the other end. Then a voice, calm and cold. "Who is this?" "The person who saved Morrison. Twice." A pause. "Whitaker?" "Lansing. You're making a mistake." "Probably, but I'm good at those." Lansing laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "You think you can stop this?" "I think you're running out of options. Hale's talking. Your accounts are frozen. Your safe houses are compromised. And Morrison's testimony goes public in 72 hours. So you came to negotiate." "No, I came to make a trade." "I'm listening." "You have Hale's daughter. I want her back. In exchange, I'll give you Morrison's location." Lansing was quiet for a long moment. "You'd betray him?" "I'd do whatever it takes to get that girl home." "And what makes you think I'll honor the trade? Because if you don't, I'll make sure every intelligence agency in NATO knows your face, your network, and every deal you've ever made. You'll spend the rest of your life running, and eventually someone will catch you." Another pause, longer this time. "Where?" Lansing asked. "Neutral ground, public place, no weapons, just you, me, and the girl." "When?" "Tomorrow, noon, Piazza Navona." "And if I don't show?" "Then Morrison testifies, and you lose everything." Lansing hung up. Claire set down the phone, her hands shaking. Yates appeared in the doorway. "That was reckless. It was necessary. He's not going to show up alone. You know that, right?" "I'm counting on it." Yates crossed the room and sat down. "What's the real play here?" "The real play is that Lansing thinks he's in control. He thinks he can show up, take Morrison, and disappear. But what he doesn't know is that Trask is already moving. Every location Hale gave us is getting hit tonight. Every person on Lansing's payroll is getting arrested. By the time he shows up tomorrow, he'll have nothing left. And if he figures that out before the meeting, then we move to plan B, which is, I'll think of something." Yates didn't smile. "You're going to get yourself killed." "Maybe, but at least I'll take him with me." The next morning, Claire stood in Piazza Navona, surrounded by tourists and street vendors, and the sound of water from Bernini's fountains. She wore civilian clothes. No uniform, no badge, just a woman in a crowd. Her shoulder ached. The bandage underneath her jacket was damp with fresh blood. She'd pushed too hard, moved too fast, but there was no time to stop. She scanned the square, counted the exits, noted the plainclothes officers Trask had stationed around the perimeter. Yates was somewhere nearby, watching, waiting. At exactly noon, a black car pulled up to the edge of the square. The rear door opened. A girl stepped out. 16. Blonde, terrified. Her hands were zip-tied in front of her. Behind her a man emerged, tall, fit, the same face from the photo, Lansing. He walked toward Claire, one hand on the girl's shoulder, the other in his jacket pocket. Claire didn't move. Lansing stopped 10 feet away. "Morrison's location." Claire pulled a folded paper from her pocket and held it up. "Let her go first." "I don't think so." "Then we're done here." Lansing smiled. "You're bluffing." "Try me." Lansing studied her. Then he pushed the girl forward. She stumbled, caught herself, and ran toward Claire. Claire grabbed her, cut the zip ties with a pocket knife, and shoved the paper toward Lansing. He took it, unfolded it, and froze. The paper was blank except for 3 words. "You've already lost." Lansing's head snapped up. "What is this?" Claire smiled. "Check your phone." Lansing pulled out his phone. The screen lit up with notifications, dozens of them. Arrests, raids, accounts seized, safe houses breached. His entire network was collapsing in real time. Lansing's face went white. He looked at Claire. I told you, you're out of options. Lansing reached for his pocket, and that's when the plainclothes officers moved. They converged from every direction, weapons drawn, voices shouting commands. Lansing didn't resist. He just stood there, watching his empire crumble, his expression blank. Claire turned to the girl. You're safe now. Your dad's waiting for you. The girl started crying. Yates appeared beside Claire. We got him. Good. And Morrison's testimony is set for tomorrow. Claire nodded. Then it's over. Is it? She looked at Lansing being led away in handcuffs and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief, just exhaustion. Yeah, she said quietly. It's over. But it wasn't. That night, Claire was back in the hospital when her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She almost ignored it. But something made her open it. Lansing was a middleman. The real problem runs deeper. Check Morrison's testimony, Section 7. Then decide if you still want this to go public. Claire's blood ran cold. She called Trask. I need to see Morrison's testimony. Now. Why? Just get it to me. 20 minutes later, Trask arrived with a classified folder. He handed it to Claire without a word. She opened it, flipped to Section 7, and froze. The section detailed a Black Ops program. Illegal weapons testing. Human experimentation, off-the-books operations in civilian hospitals, including Ironclad Field Hospital, including patients who'd been used without consent, including soldiers who died not from combat injuries, but from procedures they never agreed to. Claire's hands shook. This can't be real. Trask's face was grim. It is. You knew? I suspected, but I didn't have proof until Morrison came forward. Claire looked up at him. If this goes public, it'll destroy NATO's medical program. It'll destroy careers. It'll expose the truth, Trask said quietly. And people will finally be held accountable. Claire stared at the folder. Who authorized this? Trask didn't answer. Who authorized this? She repeated. He pulled out another document and set it on the table. Claire picked it up. It was a signature page, and the name at the bottom made her stomach drop. Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Voss. Claire read the name 3 times. 4. Like repetition would change it. It didn't. When did you find out? She asked. 2 days ago, after Morrison gave his full statement. Trask sat down across from her. Voss has been running an unauthorized medical research program for the last 3 years, testing experimental drugs on combat casualties, trialing unproven surgical techniques on soldiers who couldn't consent, falsifying records to cover it up. How many? We don't know yet. Morrison estimates at least 40 patients, maybe more. Claire's chest tightened. And how many died? Trask's silence was answer enough. She stood, pacing, trying to process it. She was in charge of patient safety. She wrote the protocols. Claire stopped. She's the one who suspended me. She wanted me gone because I was seeing too much. That's what we think. Where is she now? Under house arrest, awaiting formal charges. Claire turned. I want to talk to her. That's not... I don't care what it is. Set it up. Trask studied her. Then he made a call. An hour later, Claire was standing outside a private residence on the edge of the base. Military police flanked the door. Inside, Voss sat in her living room still in uniform, her face carved from ice. Claire walked in. The MPs stayed outside. Voss looked up. Come to gloat? No, I came for answers. I don't owe you anything. Claire sat down across from her. You put me under investigation. You suspended me. You tried to bury me. Why? Voss's jaw tightened. Because you were a threat. To what? To everything I built. Claire leaned forward. You killed people. You experimented on soldiers who trusted you. You violated every oath you ever took. And you did it for what? Research? Funding? Career advancement? Voss's eyes flashed. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. Voss stood, pacing. Do you know how many soldiers die every year from injuries we could have prevented? How many lives we could save if we had better techniques, better drugs, better protocols? So you used them as test subjects. I used casualties that were going to die anyway. I gave them a chance to contribute to something bigger than themselves. Claire's hands curled into fists. You didn't give them a choice. They were unconscious, dying. What choice did they have? The same choice every patient deserves. To live or die on their own terms. Not yours. Voss turned. You think you're better than me? You think you haven't made hard calls? You were a combat medic. You know what it's like to have 10 casualties and 5 tourniquets? You know what it's like to choose who lives and who dies. That's not the same. It's exactly the same. The only difference is I was trying to save future lives. You were just trying to save the ones in front of you. Claire stood. No, the difference is I didn't lie about it. I didn't hide it. And I didn't pretend it was for the greater good when it was really about protecting my career. Voss's face went red. Get out. You're going to trial. And when you do, I'm going to testify. I'm going to tell them everything I saw, every patient you failed, every corner you cut, every lie you told. They won't believe you. You're a fraud, a deserter hiding under a fake name. Claire smiled coldly. Not anymore. She walked out. The next morning, Morrison's testimony went public. The fallout was immediate. News outlets picked up the story within hours. Defense contractors issued statements. NATO launched an internal review. Congressional committees called for hearings. And at the center of it all was Voss. By noon, footage of her being escorted from her residence in handcuffs was playing on every major network. Her face was everywhere. Her career was over. Her legacy was ash. Claire watched it from the hospital, sitting in bed, her shoulder wrapped, her phone buzzing with messages she didn't answer. Trask appeared in the doorway. It's done, he said. Claire nodded. Morrison's in protective custody, Hale's cooperating, Lansing's network is dismantled, and Voss is facing 23 counts of medical malpractice, fraud, and conspiracy. Good. Trask sat down. The review board wants to talk to you. They want to know if you'll testify at Voss's trial. I will. They also want to know if you'll accept the position, senior trauma specialist, full reinstatement under your real name. Claire looked at him. And if I say no, then you walk away. No questions, no consequences, clean slate. She was quiet for a long moment. What happens to the hospital? We rebuild. New leadership, new protocols, new oversight. It'll take time, but it'll be better. And the patients, the ones who died because of Voss? Their families will be notified, compensated. It won't bring them back, but it's something. Claire stared out the window. I spent 4 years running from who I was, hiding, pretending I could outrun the weight of it. And the whole time I thought if I just stayed quiet, stayed small, I could avoid all this. And now? Now I know that was never an option. The weight follows you. The only choice is whether you carry it alone or whether you let people help. Trask stood. So what's your answer? Claire turned to face him. I'll take the position, on one condition. What's that? I want full authority to review every patient death in the last 3 years. I want access to every file, every record, every procedure. And if I find more cases like Voss's, I want the power to act on them. Trask nodded. Done. And I want my real name on the door. No more hiding. Staff Sergeant Claire Renner, Senior Trauma Specialist. Claire smiled faintly. That'll work. Trask extended his hand. Claire shook it. Welcome back, he said. He left. Claire sat alone, feeling the weight settle. It didn't get lighter, but for the first time in years, it felt like something she could carry. Her phone buzzed, a message from Morrison. Heard you're staying. Good. I owe you my life. Twice. When this is over, drinks are on me. Claire typed back. I don't drink, but I'll take a coffee. His response came immediately. Deal. She set the phone down and closed her eyes. For the first time in 4 years, she slept. When she woke, it was dark. The hospital was quiet. Her shoulder ached, but the pain was manageable. She got out of bed, changed into clean clothes, and walked down to the trauma wing. The night shift was quiet. A few nurses at the station. An orderly restocking supplies. No emergencies, no chaos, just the steady rhythm of a hospital at rest. Claire walked to the OR. The lights were off. The tables were empty. She stood in the doorway, looking at the space where she'd saved Morrison, where she'd fought Hale, where everything had changed. A voice behind her made her turn. Couldn't sleep? It was Reyes. She was still in scrubs, coffee in hand, looking exhausted. "Just thinking," Claire said. "About what?" "About how many people walked through this room and didn't walk out." Reyes stepped beside her. "You can't save them all. I know. But I can try to make sure the ones who die for the right reasons." Reyes nodded. "Trask told me about the review, about what you're planning to do. And I want to help. I've seen things too, things I didn't question because I trusted the system. But after Voss," she trailed off. "I can't ignore it anymore." Claire looked at her. "It's going to be ugly. People are going to fight us. Careers are going to end." "I know. And you're still in?" "I'm in." Claire extended her hand. Reyes shook it. "Then let's get to work." Over the next 2 weeks, Claire and Reyes combed through every patient file from the last 3 years. They cross-referenced procedures, they interviewed staff, they pulled autopsy reports, and they found 9 more cases. 9 soldiers who'd been used in Voss's experiments, 9 families who'd been lied to, 9 deaths that should never have happened. Claire compiled the evidence. She built the case. She made sure every detail was airtight, and when the review board convened, she presented it all. The room was packed. Officers, investigators, lawyers. Voss sat at the defense table, flanked by her attorneys, her face blank. Claire stood at the podium and laid it out. Every case, every lie, every patient. When she finished, the room was silent. The lead investigator leaned forward. "Nurse Renner, are you saying Lieutenant Colonel Voss was directly responsible for all 9 deaths?" "I'm saying she created the conditions that allowed them to happen. She approved the protocols, she falsified the records. She silenced anyone who questioned her. Whether she held the scalpel or not, she's responsible." Voss's attorney stood. "Objection. This is speculation, not evidence." "It's documentation," Claire shot back. She held up the files. "Every word in here is backed by medical records, witness statements, and forensic analysis. This isn't speculation, it's fact." The investigator nodded. "We'll take it under advisement." The hearing adjourned. 3 days later, the verdict came down. Voss was found guilty on all counts, sentenced to 20 years in a military prison, dishonorable discharge, forfeiture of all benefits. Her name was stripped from every award, every publication, every record. She became a cautionary tale. Claire watched the sentencing from the gallery. She felt nothing, no satisfaction, no vindication, just closure. When it was over, she walked out into the sunlight and called Morrison. "It's done," she said. "I heard. How are you holding up?" "I'm fine." "Liar." She smiled. "Okay, I'm tired, but I'm fine." "Good. Because I need a favor." "What kind of favor?" "The kind that involves you coming to Washington next month and accepting a commendation for everything you've done." Claire's stomach dropped. "No." "Yes. I don't want a medal. I don't want recognition. I just want to do my job." "Too late. It's already approved. You're getting honored whether you like it or not." Claire sighed. "I hate you." "I know. See you next month." He hung up. Claire stood there, phone in hand, staring at the base, at the hospital, at the life she'd built from the wreckage of the old one. And for the first time in years, she felt like she belonged. A month later, Claire stood in a conference room in Washington, D.C., wearing her dress uniform, her real name on the tag. The room was full of officers, dignitaries, politicians. Morrison was there, Trask was there. Even Yates had flown in. A general she didn't recognize stood at the podium. "Staff Sergeant Claire Renner," he said, "for exceptional valor in the face of adversity, for unwavering commitment to the truth, for saving lives at great personal risk. It is my honor to present you with the Distinguished Service Medal." The room applauded. Claire stepped forward. The general pinned the medal to her uniform. She shook his hand, smiled for the cameras, played the part. But when it was over, she found Morrison in the hallway. "Happy now?" she asked. Ecstatic. "I still don't think I deserved it." "That's why you did." Claire looked at the medal. "What happens now?" "Now you go back to work. You keep saving lives. You keep fighting. And when the next crisis hits, you'll be ready." "And if I'm not?" Morrison smiled. "Then you'll figure it out. You always do." He walked away. Claire stood alone in the hallway, holding the medal, feeling its weight. It was heavier than she expected, but she'd carry it, because that's what she did. She walked outside. The Washington air was crisp, the streets busy. She hailed a cab and gave the driver an address. 30 minutes later, she was standing in front of a cemetery. She walked through the gates, past rows of headstones until she found the one she was looking for. It was small, simple. Just a name and 2 dates. Staff Sergeant Daniel Mercer, her unit leader, the man who'd trained her, the man who died in the ambush that left her the sole survivor. Claire knelt down. She pulled the medal from her pocket and set it on the grave. "This should have been yours," she said quietly. "You deserved it more than I ever will." She stayed there for a long time, listening to the wind, watching the leaves fall. Then she stood, brushed off her uniform, and walked away. But as she reached the gate, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Congratulations on the medal. You've earned it. But we're not done. There's one more name you need to see." Attached was a photo. Claire opened it, and her blood turned to ice. It was a military ID badge. The name read Captain Andrew Yates, and underneath, in red letters, classified, Operation Nightfall, Voss's partner. Claire stared at the screen until the image burned into her retinas. Yates, the man who'd saved her in the bunker, the man who'd given her intel, the man who'd stood beside her through everything, Voss's partner. Her hands shook. She called Trask. He picked up on the first ring. "Renner? Where's Yates?" A pause. "Why?" "Just tell me where he is." "He flew back to base this morning. Why? What's going on?" Claire hung up. She flagged down a cab and gave the driver the address of Reagan National Airport. 40 minutes later, she was on a military transport heading back to Ravenna Base. She didn't sleep, didn't eat, just sat in the cargo hold staring at the photo, running through every conversation she'd had with Yates, every moment he'd been there, every lie. The plane touched down at 0200 hours. Claire grabbed her bag and headed straight for the administrative building. The base was quiet, most personnel asleep. She used her new clearance to access the classified files room, a concrete bunker beneath the main structure. She pulled Yates's personnel file first. Standard background, clean record, exemplary service. Nothing unusual. Then she pulled the Operation Nightfall file. It was heavily redacted, entire pages blacked out. But what remained was enough. Nightfall was a covert medical research program. Authorized 3 years ago. Principal investigator, Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Voss. Operations coordinator, Captain Andrew Yates. The program's objective: develop rapid battlefield medical interventions using experimental drugs and techniques. Test subjects, combat casualties with low survival probability. In other words, soldiers who were going to die anyway. Claire's stomach turned. The file listed 43 subjects, 43 names, 43 soldiers who'd been used without consent. And at the bottom of the list, flagged in red, was a note. Program terminated due to security breach. Evidence destroyed. Operatives reassigned. But not prosecuted, not arrested, just reassigned. Claire photographed every page with her phone. Then she went looking for Yates. She found him in the operations center, sitting at a desk, reviewing satellite imagery. He looked up when she walked in. "Renner, what are you doing back? I thought you were in D.C. for another week." Claire closed the door behind her. "We need to talk." Yates frowned. "About what?" She pulled out her phone and showed him the photo. His face didn't change, but something in his eyes did. "Where did you get that?" he asked quietly. "Someone sent it to me. Someone who wanted me to know the truth." Yates set down his pen. "And what truth is that?" "That you were part of Operation Nightfall, that you worked with Voss, that you helped her run experiments on soldiers who couldn't consent." Yates was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood. "You don't understand what you're looking at." "Then explain it to me." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because it's classified, and because you don't have the full picture." Claire stepped closer. "Then give it to me." Yates walked to the window, looking out at the dark base. Nightfall was supposed to save lives. We were developing techniques that could stabilize critical patients in the field, things that would give medics like you more options. Better outcomes. By using people as test subjects. By using casualties that were already dying. People who had minutes left. We gave them a chance to contribute to something that could save thousands, without asking them first. Yates turned. They were unconscious, bleeding out. There was no time to ask. There's always time to ask. You just didn't want the answer to be no. Yates's jaw tightened. You think you know what it's like to make those calls? You think you understand the pressure of knowing that every second you waste asking permission is another soldier dying somewhere? I was a combat medic for 3 years. I made those calls every day, and I never once experimented on someone who couldn't say yes. Then you let people die who didn't have to. The words hit like a slap. Claire's hands curled into fists. Get out! What? You heard me. Get out of this room before I have you arrested. Yates's expression hardened. You can't arrest me. You don't have the authority. Want to bet? She pulled out her phone and called Trask. General, I'm in the operations center with Captain Yates. I need MP support immediately. He's a fugitive from the Nightfall investigation. Renner, what are you talking about? Yates was Voss's operations coordinator. He helped run the program, and he's been covering it up ever since. Trask was silent. Then, are you sure? Positive. I've got the files. I've got the evidence. And I've got him in front of me right now. Don't let him leave. I'm sending MPs now. Claire hung up. Yates stared at her. You just ended your career. No, I just saved it. You have no idea what you've done. The people behind Nightfall, they're not going to let this go. They'll come for you, and they won't stop. Let them try. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Heavy. Fast. The door burst open and 4 MPs stormed in, weapons drawn. Captain Yates, you're under arrest, the lead MP said. Yates didn't resist, he just looked at Claire. You think you won, but this is bigger than Voss, bigger than me. And when you find out how deep it goes, you're going to wish you'd walked away. I stopped walking away a long time ago. The MPs cuffed him and let him out. Claire stood alone in the operations center, breathing hard, her pulse pounding in her ears. Trask appeared in the doorway minutes later. You okay? He asked. I'm fine. What happened? Claire handed him her phone with the photographed files. Yates was part of Nightfall. He coordinated operations. He helped Voss select subjects, and he's been covering it up since the program got shut down. Trask scrolled through the images, his face darkening with each page. How long have you known? An hour? I got a tip at the cemetery. From who? I don't know. But whoever it was wanted me to finish what Morrison started. Trask handed back the phone. This changes everything. If Yates was involved, then there are more people, more layers. This doesn't end with him. I know. And you're willing to keep digging? Claire met his eyes. As long as it takes. Trask nodded. Then let's do this right. Full investigation, complete transparency, no buried files, no reassignments, everyone involved goes down. Agreed. Over the next 3 weeks, Claire worked alongside a team of military investigators to unravel the full scope of Operation Nightfall. They pulled records, they interviewed witnesses, they tracked money, and what they found was worse than anyone expected. Nightfall wasn't just Voss and Yates. It was a network of 23 officers, contractors, and civilians spread across 4 bases. It had funding from 3 defense contractors. It had approval from someone high enough to bury oversight, and it had killed 61 soldiers. 61 people who'd trusted the system to save them, only to become experiments. Claire compiled every case, every name, every detail. She contacted families, she reviewed autopsy reports. She built an airtight case that couldn't be ignored or buried. The investigation revealed patterns Claire hadn't expected. Soldiers flagged as low survival probability were systematically routed to specific surgical teams. Consent forms were forged. Medical records were altered after death to hide the experimental procedures. And the families were told their loved ones had died from combat injuries, not from untested drugs that stopped their hearts. One mother in particular haunted Claire, Sarah Kellerman, whose 19-year-old son had been listed as KIA from shrapnel wounds. The autopsy showed he died from an experimental coagulant that caused massive organ failure. He'd been stable when he arrived at the hospital. He should have survived. Claire called Mrs. Kellerman personally. I don't understand, the woman said, her voice breaking. They told me he bled out. They said there was nothing they could do. They lied, Claire said quietly. Your son was used in an unauthorized medical experiment. He didn't have to die. And I'm going to make sure everyone who was responsible pays for what they did to him. The silence on the other end lasted so long, Claire thought the connection had dropped. Then Mrs. Kellerman spoke. Thank you. No one's ever told me the truth before. Claire made 47 calls like that over the next 2 weeks. 47 families who deserved to know. Some cried, some screamed, some just went silent, but all of them deserved the truth, and Claire gave it to them. When the investigation concluded, the fallout was catastrophic. 14 officers were court-martialed. 9 contractors lost their licenses. 2 defense companies faced federal charges. And the trail led all the way to a deputy undersecretary in the Department of Defense who'd signed off on Nightfall's funding. He resigned within hours of the report going public. But the real Jen Han came when Yates took the stand. The courtroom was packed. Press. Military brass. Families of the victims. Claire sat in the front row, watching as Yates was led in wearing prison blues, his hands cuffed. The prosecutor stood. Captain Yates, you're accused of conspiring to conduct unauthorized medical experiments on military personnel, falsifying medical records, and obstruction of justice. How do you plead? Yates looked at the judge, then at Claire. Guilty. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The prosecutor continued. The prosecution has evidence that you personally selected patients for experimental procedures. Is that correct? Yes. And you knew these patients had not consented? Yes. And you knew that some of these procedures would likely result in death? Yates hesitated. We believe the risk was acceptable given the potential benefit. The potential benefit to medical science, not to the patient. Correct. Claire's hands tightened on the armrest. The prosecutor pulled up a photo on the screen. A young soldier, smiling, in uniform. This is Private First Class Daniel Kellerman. Age 19. He arrived at Ironclad Field Hospital with shrapnel wounds to the leg and abdomen. Stable vitals. Expected survival rate of 85%. You selected him for an experimental coagulant trial. He died 6 hours later from multi-organ failure. Do you remember him? Yates stared at the photo. Yes. Did you tell his mother what really killed him? No. Why not? Because the program was classified. So you let her believe her son died from his combat injuries. You let her believe there was nothing anyone could have done, when in reality, you killed him. Yates's voice cracked. We were trying to save future lives. By sacrificing the ones in front of you. The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order. Claire sat perfectly still, watching Yates crumble. The trial lasted 3 days. The testimony was brutal. Witness after witness described the selection process, the falsified records, the cover-ups. One nurse broke down on the stand describing how she'd been ordered to administer an experimental drug to a patient who was begging not to be sedated. He knew something was wrong, she sobbed. He kept saying he didn't want to die, and I told him he'd be fine. I lied to him, and he died 30 minutes later. By the time the verdict came, the outcome was inevitable. Guilty on all counts. Yates was sentenced to 25 years in military prison. Dishonorable discharge. Forfeiture of all benefits. His career was over, his life was over, but 61 soldiers were still dead. After the sentencing, Claire walked out of the courthouse into cold sunlight. Families surrounded her, thanking her, crying, asking questions she couldn't answer. Mrs. Kellerman found her near the steps. I wanted to thank you, the woman said, for telling me the truth, for fighting for my son. Claire's throat tightened. I'm sorry I couldn't save him. You couldn't, but you made sure his death mattered. You made sure it meant something. Mrs. Kellerman hugged her. Claire stood rigid for a moment, then slowly wrapped her arms around the woman. When they separated, Mrs. Kellerman pressed something into Claire's hand. A photo. Young Private Kellerman in his dress uniform. Don't forget him, she said. I won't. Claire watched her walk away, then looked down at the photo. The kid was barely old enough to shave. He had his whole life ahead of him, and Yates had taken it. She pocketed the photo and walked back to the base. The media frenzy lasted for weeks. Claire refused every interview request. She didn't want to be a symbol. She didn't want to be a face. She just wanted to do the work. But Trask had other plans. The Secretary of Defense wants to meet with you. he said one morning, walking into her office unannounced. Claire looked up from a stack of case files. Why? Because you've become the face of military medical reform, whether you intended to or not. I don't want to be the face of anything. I know, but they're proposing a new position. Director of Medical Ethics and Patient Advocacy. You'd oversee all NATO medical facilities, set standards, investigate complaints, have the authority to shut down programs that violate patient rights. Claire stared at him. That's not a medical position. That's politics. It's both. And it's the only way to make sure what happened here doesn't happen somewhere else. What if I say no? Then someone else takes the job. Someone who might not care as much as you do. Claire was quiet for a long time. I need to think about it. Take your time, but not too much. They need an answer in 2 weeks. She spent those 2 weeks at the memorial wall. Every day she'd stand in front of the 61 names, reading them aloud, one by one, committing them to memory. She thought about what she'd learned, that systems don't protect people, people protect people, that silence enables cruelty, that the hardest thing about fighting for what's right is that you often fight alone, but you don't stay alone. On the 14th day, she called Trask. I'll take the position, she said. You sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Trask laughed. That's the right answer. I'll let them know. Claire hung up and looked at the memorial one last time. I won't let this happen again, she whispered to the names. I promise. 2 years later, Claire sat in her office in Brussels, reviewing a complaint from a field hospital in Poland. Her title was printed on the door, Director of Medical Ethics and Patient Advocacy, NATO Allied Command. She'd restructured protocols across 12 bases. She'd trained over 300 medical staff. She'd shut down 2 programs that violated patient consent. She'd fired 6 senior officers for ignoring safety violations. And she'd made enemies, powerful ones. But she'd also made change. Real, lasting, systemic change. Her phone rang. It was Morrison. How's the new job? He asked. Exhausting. You? Same. Just finished testimony for another corruption case. Apparently Nightfall wasn't the only skeleton in the closet. Doesn't surprise me. Me neither. Listen, I'm flying into Brussels next week. Want to grab that coffee? Claire smiled. Only if you're buying. Deal. And Claire? Yeah? You did good. Better than good. You changed everything. We changed everything. No, this was you. Don't forget that. They hung up. Claire turned back to her computer. There was an email waiting. From a young medic stationed in Germany, she'd reported a senior officer for pressuring her to falsify patient records. The message was scared, apologetic, uncertain. Claire recognized that voice. She'd used it herself once. She picked up the phone and called the base commander. This is Director Renner. I need to speak with you about one of your medical officers, and I need it on the record. The commander tried to deflect, tried to minimize, tried to bury it. Claire didn't let him. You have 2 options, she said calmly. You can suspend the officer immediately and launch a formal investigation, or I can fly there tomorrow and do it myself. And if I have to come there, I'm bringing inspectors who will audit every procedure you've run in the last 2 years. Your choice. 30 minutes later, the officer was suspended. The investigation was launched. The medic was protected, and Claire moved on to the next case. That evening, she stood on her balcony overlooking the city. The lights of Brussels stretched out below her, endless and alive. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the hiding, the running, the moment she decided to stop. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. She opened it cautiously. You've changed the system, but systems don't stay changed without people like you protecting them. The 61 names on that wall will never be forgotten because you refuse to let them be. Keep fighting, keep questioning, keep refusing to stay quiet. The world needs more people who won't look away. A friend. Claire read it twice, then saved it. She went inside, made a cup of coffee, and sat down at her desk. There were 53 cases waiting for review. She opened the first file. A complaint from a nurse in Romania, a surgeon performing unauthorized procedures, patients suffering complications, records being altered. It was Nightfall all over again, smaller scale, different faces, same pattern. Claire picked up the phone. This is Director Renner. I need a full audit of the surgical wing at Constanta Base. Yes, immediately. I'll be on the next flight out. She hung up. packed her bag, and got back to work. Because the fight wasn't over. It never would be. But that was okay. Because she wasn't the quiet nurse in the corner anymore. She wasn't the woman hiding from her past. She was Staff Sergeant Claire Renner, combat medic, survivor, advocate, the person who'd been underestimated, dismissed, and silenced, until she decided not to be. And that decision had changed everything, not just for her, but for every soldier who'd walk into a military hospital after her, every medic who'd stand up when something wasn't right, every person who'd been told their voice didn't matter. She'd shown them it did, and she'd keep showing them, for as long as it took. 3 months later, Claire received an invitation to speak at the NATO Medical Summit in Berlin. 500 medical professionals, senior leadership from every member nation, the biggest platform she'd ever been offered. She almost declined. But then she thought about Private Kellerman, about the 47 families she'd called, about the nurses and medics who'd reached out to her, asking for help, asking for hope. She accepted. The auditorium was massive, tiered seating, professional lighting, a podium with her name displayed on the screen behind it. Claire walked to the center, looked out at the sea of faces, and began. My name is Claire Renner. 2 years ago, I was a nurse hiding under a fake name because I couldn't face what I'd been. I'd saved over 200 lives as a combat medic, but I'd also lost my entire unit. And I thought if I could just disappear, the weight of that would disappear too. The room was silent. It didn't. Running from who you are doesn't make you lighter. It makes you hollow. And I stayed hollow until I couldn't anymore. Until I saw something that I couldn't unsee. Until I met soldiers who deserved better than silence. She clicked to the next slide. The memorial wall. 61 names. These are the people who changed everything. They were used in unauthorized medical experiments. They died because someone decided their lives were worth less than data. And they were forgotten until someone decided they shouldn't be. Claire's voice hardened. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to remind you why you're here. You're not here to build careers. You're not here to publish papers. You're here to save lives. And the moment you forget that is the moment you become part of the problem. She paused. Every patient who walks into your hospital is trusting you with everything they have. Their life, their future, their family's future. And you owe them more than protocol. You owe them your full attention, your full effort, your refusal to look away when something isn't right. Claire looked directly into the audience. I know what it's like to be the person no one listens to, the person whose voice doesn't matter, the person who gets told to stay in their lane. But here's what I learned. Your voice matters more than you know, and the moment you decide to use it, really use it, you become dangerous to everyone who benefits from silence. She clicked to the final slide, a photo of her standing in front of the new patient advocacy office in Brussels. This is what's possible when you refuse to stay quiet, when you choose patience over politics, when you remember that the people on our tables aren't numbers, they're people, and they deserve better than our excuses. The room erupted in applause. Claire stepped down from the podium. Medical professionals surrounded her, shaking her hand, asking questions, sharing their own stories of seeing things that weren't right. One older surgeon, a colonel from France, pulled her aside. 20 years ago, I saw something similar to Nightfall at my base, he said quietly. I reported it. No one listened. I gave up. I told myself it wasn't my fight. And now? Claire asked. Now I know I was wrong. And I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen again. He walked away. Claire watched him go and felt something shift. The weight she'd been carrying for so long felt different now. Not lighter, but shared. Because she wasn't alone anymore. That night, Claire returned to her hotel room and found a package waiting. No return address. Just her name. Inside was a framed photograph of the memorial wall and a handwritten note. You gave our son's death meaning. You made sure he wasn't forgotten. Thank you for being the person who wouldn't look away. The Kellerman family. Claire set the frame on her desk and stared at it for a long time. Then she opened her laptop and started drafting new protocols for patient consent in combat zones. Real protocols, enforceable ones, the kind that would make sure no one could ever run another Nightfall. She worked through the night, because the work was never finished. But that was okay, because she'd finally found what she'd been running from all those years: purpose. 6 months later, Claire stood in front of the rebuilt ironclad field hospital. The facility had been completely renovated. New equipment, new staff, new leadership, And above the entrance, a bronze plaque had been installed. In memory of the 61 soldiers who gave their lives so that others might live better. May we never forget. May we always question. May we always choose patience first. Trask stood beside her. You did this, he said. We did this. No. You started it. The rest of us just followed. Claire looked at the plaque, at the names engraved beneath it, and felt the weight settle one final time. She'd carried these 61 people for 2 years. Their stories, their deaths, their families. And now she could finally let them rest, not because she'd forgotten them, but because she'd honored them. What's next? Trask asked. Claire smiled. Whatever needs doing. That's not an answer. Here it is. They walked back toward the administrative building. Inside, a new class of medical staff was gathering for orientation. Young faces, eager eyes, the next generation. Claire was scheduled to speak to them in 10 minutes. She looked at her notes, thought about what she wanted to say. Then she tossed the notes in the trash, because the truth didn't need a script. She walked into the auditorium. The room quieted. I'm Claire Renner, she began, and I'm here to tell you that everything you think you know about medicine is about to be challenged. You're going to see things that don't make sense. You're going to hear orders that feel wrong. You're going to be told to stay quiet when every instinct screams to speak up. She looked at each face, and when that moment comes, and it will come, you have a choice. You can do what's easy, or you can do what's right. You can protect your career, or you can protect your patient. You can stay silent, or you can be the voice that changes everything. She paused. I was the quiet one for a long time. The person who didn't make waves, who didn't ask questions, who just did what she was told. And people died because of it. Not on my table, but in a system that I was part of. A system I didn't challenge. Claire's voice strengthened. I'm not that person anymore, and I'm here to make sure you never have to be either. Because the moment you remember that patients aren't numbers, that they're people with families and futures and worth, that's the moment you become the kind of medical professional this system needs. The room was silent. Then one person started clapping. Then another. Then the whole room. Claire didn't smile. She just nodded. Because the applause wasn't for her. It was for the promise they were all making. To be better. To do better. To never look away. That evening, Claire walked alone through the base, past the memorial wall, past the hospital, to the edge of the fence where she'd first met Yates. She thought about how far she'd come. From the woman hiding under a false name to the director reshaping an entire system. From someone who ran from her past to someone who used it as fuel. From invisible to undeniable. Her phone buzzed. A message from Morrison. Heard your speech went well. Proud of you, Renner. You've become exactly who you were always supposed to be. She typed back, Thanks, but I'm not done yet. His response was immediate. Good. The world needs more people who refuse to quit. Claire pocketed her phone and looked out at the darkening sky. She thought about the 61 names, about the families, about the young medics who'd reach out to her next week, next month, next year. And she thought about the choice she'd made, to stop running, to start fighting, to become the person she wished had been there when she needed help. That was the real victory. Not the medals, not the position, not the recognition. The victory was in knowing that somewhere, right now, a young medic was standing in an OR, seeing something that didn't make sense and remembering what Claire had said, and choosing to speak up, because one voice could change everything, if it refused to stay quiet. Claire turned and walked back toward the hospital. There was work to do. There always would be, and she wouldn't have it any other way, because she'd finally learned the truth. You don't outrun the weight. You carry it. You honor it. You use it to build something better, and you never, ever look away. That was the lesson. That was the legacy. That was Claire Renner, the nurse who became a soldier, the soldier who became a voice, the voice that refused to be silenced, and in refusing, changed everything.